Give me your valuables now. Give me your money now.
Begin at the beginning. It is spring, moonless night in the small town, starless and Bible black, the cobble streets silent and the hunched quarters and Rabbit's Wood limping invisible down to the slow black, crow black, fishing boat bobbing sea.
1 dead. 2 dead. Give me your valuables now.
Hush, the babies are sleeping. The farmers, the fishers, the tradesmen and pensioners, cobbler, schoolteacher, postman and publican, the undertaker and the fancy woman, drunkard, dressmaker, preacher, policeman, the webfoot cocklewomen and the tidy wives. Young girls lie bedded, soft, or glide in their dreams with rings and trousseau, bridesmaided by glowworms down the aisles of the organ-playing wood. The boys are dreaming wicked of the bucking ranches of the night and the Jolly Rogered sea, and the anthracite statues of the horses sleep in the fields, and the cows
3
and bars and the dogs
dead.
and the wet-nosed yards,
4
and the cats
dead.
nap in the slant corners or loaf.
24 years
And the anthracite
have
statues of the
passed
horses sleep
in this
the
place.
fields, and the cows and the barns
Will
and
we
the dogs
ever
and the wet-nosed yards,
get
and the
an
cats
answer?
nap in the slant corners or loafs. Begin at the beginning.
Welcome to Extraordinary Stories podcast.
And the cats nap in the slant corners or lope fast and
Hey, how are you? Are you well? Are you good? I am. So, this is an episode that's not part of a series. While I'm working away on the other series, I thought, you know what? I'm just going to put out a regular old extraordinary story. Just a story I wanted to tell. Just an episode that's not under a theme. It's just an episode that I wanted to do. Alright, so this story, it was gifted to me by Lorraine Ledwell, whose voice you will hear in the episode. And when she sent it to me, I thought, oh God, I've never heard of this story. And then I went, hang on. Yes, I have. Because I remember this from my childhood because it was on TV in the UK a lot. The names to me were like, oh, that's very familiar. The crimes were very, very familiar. This is a UK based unbelievable crime criminal. Crime criminal? I don't know if you have such a term. Crime criminal. I like it. I don't think it exists, but I like it. So, it's an unbelievable crime criminal from the UK. It's huge. Settle in for a crazy, crazy story. Are you ready? Okay, let's go. So, picture this. Rolling hills, lavish greenery, beautiful coastal stretches of cliffs and sea, and thousands of acres of land. Now, what I'm describing is an area in Wales in the UK. Now, the area is Pembrokeshire, and it's absolutely beautiful. It's a real, jewel in the crown of stunningness in the UK. So, this is interesting. A lot of the time, when a lot of TV shows are filmed and are meant to depict beautiful English rolling hills and all that, things that get associated with England, that kind of that lovely greenery, often they use the Welsh countryside to actually stand in for England. So quite often it's Wales rather than it is England, and you get that a lot with Scotland and Ireland. So obviously the UK is made up of Scotland, England, Ireland, and Wales, and quite often these TV shows or films, they'll use each other's landscapes. I know that happens everywhere. I know it happens absolutely everywhere, but it happens quite a lot with Scotland and Ireland. They tend to, you'll watch a lot of supposed things that have been filmed in Ireland, and you go, well, that's definitely Scotland. But yeah, so they do that a lot with English TV. They use a lot of Welsh landscapes. So if you imagine there is this beautiful area in Wales, and it's just this gorgeous sort of sprawling greenery, but there are little villages scattered in amongst it. Now, every house is, maybe a good 100 yards from the next house. It's not kind of house upon house. Most of them are big sort of 2-3 story, big fancy pants kind of houses with lots of farmland. They're not totally isolated. They're not completely isolated, but you've got your own land. You're not, living right next to someone. You're not living on top of each other in a crowded area in the way that most places are. Let's go to the area that I was describing in the early 1980s. Something very alarming is happening. There's been a series of very, very violent and very vicious robberies in the area. Houses are being broken into and lots of valuables are being stolen. So jewellery, money, artwork, clothing, it's all being stolen. And this really begins to unnerve the whole area. This is a quiet place, and it now seems to be under threat. In a lot of the police reports, the person committing these crimes, it's hard to get a full description of the person. Quite often the person is wearing a balaclava, so the victims of these attacks can't really describe who this is. They can give a sort of guess at it. They say possibly late 20s, early 30s man, about 6 foot tall, but they don't really have much else to go on. Police have really got nothing to work with here because whoever is committing these crimes is wearing a balaclava. I mean, balaclavas. I know they're practical, right, for robbers and criminals, but they're such a terrible look. They are so, it is impossible to look sexy in a balaclava. I dare you to show me anyone who looks sexy in, well, not even just a balaclava, just a mask. It just doesn't exist. You can't. Nobody can look sexy in that at all. I mean, I'm not talking about like masquerade ball masks. I mean like a hide your face kind of mask. Although, I suppose, right, thinking about it, if you're a robber, you're not really worried about being sexy, are you? You're not really worried about looking good. You're not like, ooh, I'm going to go robbing tonight. Tell you what I'll do. I'll put on my sparkly balaclava. No, I know that. I know. I just mean, they're just hideous. I just think they're absolutely horrible. Victims report that their back doors to their houses would burst open and a masked man would enter holding a sawn-off shotgun and demanding to know where the valuables were. In most cases, nearly all of them, the person at home was attacked. Even if they were cooperating, even if they were going, look, here's where the jewellery is, here's where my money is, this man was still attacking them. He would kick them in the face, he would beat them with the gun, he would leave them always in a bloody and a beaten state in their home. Then it starts to get creepier. People in the area and the villages nearby, these little sleepy towns, they begin to notice that the fences in their garden or the fences around their land would be cut. So panels of their fence would be removed, or bits of their fence would be cut so that it was no longer functioning as a secure fence. Locks on gates were being broken. Why? Well, police assumed, and correctly, that the robber was cutting bits of fences in advance to make entrance to the properties easier, so that in the dark of night, when they were coming to rob houses, they wouldn't have to climb or scale big bits of fence. Instead, what they would have done is, in advance, cut a bit of fence, and it was easy then to get through onto someone's land. And also, it meant that it was easy to exit that land when you had gone into the house, you'd stolen everything you needed to, and you could be on your way. You'd already set yourself up an escape route. I mean, fucking terrifying. Isn't that really scary? I mean, imagine it. This is happening in your village. You know, you're like, and I'm going to the local shop to get myself some milk and a newspaper. Oh, hello there, neighbour. And then you suddenly realise that a bit of your fence is missing, or a bit of your gate has been cut, or the locks have been burst open. And now you're like, I'm going to the shop to get my milk, and I'm really scared because actually what it means is you're next. You're lined up to be next. So when police are searching the area after some of these robberies, what they're finding is they're finding some of the valuables are turning up in the hedges and in the bushes in the area. The things that this robber obviously didn't want were just being thrown aside. So bits of jewellery considered to be not valuable, they would just end up in a garden somewhere. It's insane. So, you've been robbed the night before, and then all of a sudden, some of the stuff that he's taken from you is turning up, just lying in a garden somewhere because it's not been valuable. So this person's obviously not careful about where they're actually leaving things. So who could this be? Police ask themselves this question, and It's a good question to ask. They ask who in the local area has a knowledge of these properties, who has the time and the ability to be able to cut parts out of a fence and to stake out these properties. They're thinking it surely has to be someone local. I mean, it's got to be someone who has a knowledge and understands the area. Now, they're attempting to answer this question, but the robberies continue and people continue to be vigilant, but women who are home alone are still being attacked by this man as he breaks in and he robs them and he beats them. All of the victims report the same thing. He seems to enjoy the beatings. He likes to kick in the face. He likes to punch. He likes to drag people around their home by their hair. Male, female, old, young, it doesn't matter. He enjoys terrorising people as he steals from their home. People living in the area are just now living in constant fear, and things are going to get worse. In 1985, in the midst of these robberies, a terrible and a brutal crime is about to take place. Brother and sister Richard and Helen Thomas, who live in the area in a farmhouse, are about to make the news in the most horrific way. So, Helen and Richard are a reclusive pair. They live in this farmhouse, brother and sister. Neither of them have ever got married, and they keep to themselves. They mind their own business. I love a recluse. I really do. I don't know what it is. I don't know why recluse stories so fascinate me. I just think they're fucking amazing. I think one day I might just become a recluse. Just because I think it's really interesting. I would love it in the future if people were like, does anyone remember Barry Henderson? And people would be like, yes, well, he's a recluse now. Why? Ooh, no one knows. It's a mystery. Ooh. Anyway, Helen and Richard. They are recluses, and Helen is at home on an early evening in 1985 when the back door to the house opens and a man in a balaclava enters and he begins to attack her. He ties her up and he beats her round the face with a shotgun. And as she lies bleeding in the kitchen, he ransacks the house for valuables and money. And as he's doing this, Helen's brother Richard comes home and he finds this horrific sight. Helen is shot through the head with the shotgun and Richard is shot in the chest. Both of their bodies lie side by side in the kitchen in their home. Now the attacker escapes with possessions from the house. So what alerts police to this? Well, it's not the sound of the gunshots, and it's not a neighbour, although they're, a bit of a distance away from anyone else. It's not anyone raising the alarm because they've heard screams or they've heard anything. Instead, what alerts police is the fact that the property is on fire. This killer has robbed the house, killed Helen and Richard, and set the house on fire in an attempt to destroy any evidence. So when police, ambulances, and the fire brigade get there, the entire farmhouse is up in flames. It takes days for the fire to go out. I mean, this is a huge property. This is a massive property. It takes days for it to be put out, and eventually their bodies are discovered in amongst the ruins of that property. Now, this crime was, of course, so brutal and so vicious. It became one of the biggest investigations in the UK in the 1980s. It absolutely dominated the news. This quiet, reclusive brother and sister brutally murdered in their own home in Wales, in a quiet area with no witnesses, no evidence, because it had all been burned, and most importantly, no clue from police as to who was responsible. So police are under pressure. They are under some serious pressure now. 150 police officers are assigned to the case. The surrounding lands, the farms, the villages, they're all, every little crevice, every little thing is overturned in the hope for a clue, for something. But nothing. Police eventually just have to admit defeat, which is not easy for them. It's not easy in the face of TV news constantly asking, why haven't the police solved this case? Why haven't they caught the killer? Or killers? They don't know at this point. Why have they not caught the person responsible for this? And so, this area of Wales, it lies in terror, not sure what's to come next in the wake of all these robberies and now a terrible double murder.
The shops in mourning, the welfare hall in Widows' Weeds, and all of the people of the Lard and Dunfarm town are sleeping now. Hush, the babies are sleeping. The farmers, the fishers, the tradesmen and pensioners.
Now, this next part of the story is going to sound weird. It's going to sound like I've accidentally edited 2 different episodes together, but I promise you, I haven't. There was once a game show on TV in the UK called Bullseye. Right, it was a British, it was an institution of a game show. So it was based on darts, based on the game darts. So contestants would come on in their teams and they would throw darts to win money or gamble for prizes. So you would come on, you would try and throw darts, earn a certain amount of money, and then you would earn a certain money, and then you would be allowed to gamble that for something else. And it was ooh, you can gamble, you can win all these prizes. Its kind of catchphrase was, look what you could have won. It became its famous thing. So the way it worked was you could win up to I don't know, £500, £1,000, and then you could gamble that. And if you could throw a certain number in darts, you would get an even bigger prize. So, a speedboat, a luxury car, a holiday, all these things, right? Really, quite big prizes. But if you didn't gamble and you took the money, the host would always say, look what you could have won, and then show you what you didn't win. I mean, it's pretty shit. Because what a way to make yourself feel bad about not gambling. It's you're being shown this luxury car. This is what you could have had, but sorry, you decided not to gamble. Anyway, it was huge on British TV. It used to be on, I think, a Saturday afternoon, and then it got moved on to Sunday night primetime TV slot. So, in 1989, a man appeared on the show as a contestant with his friend in his team. And this man was John Cooper, a Welshman, a labourer for farms and villages in the Pembrokeshire area of Wales. A man who had lived in the very same place that these crimes had taken place. So, here was John on national TV playing darts. Here he was with he had like sort of scruffy hair, kind of like, do you know, like a lot of guys in the 80s, a bit sort of looks like a perm, bit of a dodgy moustache going on. John talked in the episodes when, they do that sort of interview. Oh, who are you? Where are you from? He talked about how he loved the coastal area of Wales, and he loves the cliffs and the sea, and how he labours on the farms in the area. At the point that John is appearing on this game show, it's been 4 years since the brutal murder of Helen and Richard when their house was burned down. So, how does John do? Well, not bad. He's not bad at darts, he's okay at it. He walks away at the end of the TV game show with £250. So he leaves the show with cash in his pocket. That's fine. That's fine. It's just another episode of Bullseye. Let's look a little closer at John. John Cooper was born in 1944. He left school at age 15, and when he left school, he worked in just various different kind of trades. Did a bit of everything. Bit of an odd job guy. In 1966, he was 22, and he met a young woman called Patricia. They married quickly, and they had 2 young children, a boy and a girl. In 1978, so that would have been, let me get that right, 1966, he met his wife. 1978, what's that, 22 years, no, is that right? 22 years after being married, he won a competition on something called Spot the Ball. Now, Spot the Ball was one of these, I remember this, it's like a football game where you basically guess who's going to win over the weekend. So you go like, oh, that person's going to score 2 goals and that person's going to go score 1. That team isn't going to do this and whatever. And then you put it into like the bookies and then you win money, right? If you get it right. It's just gambling, basically. It's just betting. Anyway, John was into this and he wins £90,000. Now that's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. A lot of cash. So this is years before he's on this TV show. But this is the money that he has, the money he's won. And so for him and his wife and his kids, he buys them a really nice house in the Welsh coastal area. And he sets them up. And they run a sort of family business selling second-hand goods. Now, they're quite wealthy now because of John's winnings, but John wanted more. He wanted more and more and more money, the way that people do when they have money. He tries to invest some of his money into property, but it all ends up becoming like different failed ventures, and well, eventually all of the money that John had won is lost and the family are back to being poor. So it's around this time John has lost the money and he has to start working as a labourer on the farms in this area of Wales. And what comes with him being able to work as a farm labourer means that John has access to lots of different properties and lots of different wealthy people in the area. It also means that John knew brother and sister Helen and Richard Thomas, who'd died so tragically. John knew them because John worked for them. But here he was, on TV, playing darts on a game show. The TV appearance was in May 1989, 4 years after the murders and house fire. So John Cooper, he continues his job as a farm labourer, driving tractors, working on the land, doing odd jobs for the community, bits and pieces, but the community have never forgotten the horrific double murder from 4 years ago, and pretty soon something is going to happen to make the town shake once more.
Hush, the babies are sleeping.
Peter and Gwenda Dixon were a couple in their early 50s from England who enjoyed hiking and camping. So they would go around the UK, they would set themselves up, just like a couple of days here and there, pitch up their tent, whatever, have a lovely couple of days and then move on. That's what they really enjoyed to do as a couple. Lovely. Great. If that's your thing, great. I've only ever been camping once and it was a complete disaster. Oh, such a disaster, right? I went to an arts and music festival, oh God, in the north of England about 10 years ago now. It was one of these let's play guitar in the forest, we'll dance around some trees, we'll eat some wild berries. It was one of those really hippie dippy kind of fucking whatever, right? And so I went to it. I went with friends. I was like, oh, this sounds great, yeah, let's go. So I brought a tent with me. Now I'm not really down with the whole camping thing, right? It's not my thing. I can't really be arsed with the whole, let's get a tent out, let's put some pegs in, nah, it's not for me. So I bought this tent, right, that was like a pop-up tent. So it's one of these ones that you basically unzip it and then you have very little work to do. You essentially just put all the zips in the right area, you do the odd little thing and boom, a tent arrives and you're like, yes, it's great. You've had to do very little work, right? It's not really fixed into the ground, it's a little pop-up tent. Fine. So here I am with my tent. Now I bought a tent called the Commander and it was a beauty. Oh, it was so sexy. It had this leopard print. No, not leopard print. I said leopard. I didn't mean leopard. It had imagine a leopard print tent. It had an army print on it, right? So this gorgeous army print. And I think there's a photo somewhere of me and the Commander. Anyway, so I put the Commander up, right? Pooh, here we go. Put all my stuff in it. Great. And then I'm like, right, do you know what this weekend needs? This weekend really needs for me to have some alcohol. So I'm going to go and find some beer. So I go off, right? And I'm like, yep, round the festival. Great. Had a few beers. Come back. The Commander had been stolen. Stolen. Under my very nose, it had been taken. I was raging because all my stuff was gone. Everything, all the stuff I'd left in the tent, everything was gone. So I had to go around the rest of the weekend sharing tents with first of all my friends and then some strangers. I was essentially homeless in a field. I don't even know how that happens, but I was homeless in a field. So There you go. Commander was gone. So, Peter and Gwenda Dixon, they're in this coastal area where there've been all of these terrible, terrible robberies. And they go on holiday so often that it's not unusual for them to fall off the grid. You know, it's the 1980s, and actually for them to call home or call someone in their family, it would require them going to a phone box and doing all of that. So if they disappeared for a week, well, that was fine. However, a week and a half passes and their son doesn't hear from them, and he starts to get worried. So he alerts Welsh police, and he lets them know that his parents usually make contact, but they haven't. He gives a rough description of where they might be camping. Police do a routine check of the area, and the routine check is going to turn into so much more than just a routine check. The bodies of Gwenda and Peter are discovered dead on the coastal path in Wales near where the other crimes have happened. Gwenda has been raped and shot in the head. Her husband Peter has been shot in the chest, and his body has been tied with ropes, and it hangs over one of the cliffs, dangling over the open water. The couple, they've been robbed of all of their possessions: wedding rings, cash, valuables. Their bags have been ripped open. The scene is bloody and brutal. Now hundreds of police become involved in this case. What they do is they start to look at the deaths of the brother and the sister from years ago, and they start to see some similarities. They start looking at the bullets that were used to kill Gwenda and Peter, and they think, well, okay, this looks like it could have been shot from the same gun. They realise that both women were shot in the same way. Both women were killed with a shot to the head, and the men were shot in the chest. It's the same area. The bodies were laid side by side in each of these cases. And so now police start to wonder, do they have a serial killer on their hands? After weeks of questioning and weeks of investigation, the one and the only thing that police have is a very, very vague description of a man with curly hair and a dodgy moustache using a cash point in the area. So locals had reported there was a man using the ATM in the local area, and he looked a little bit dodgy. Well, why would you make that link, okay? Why would you even make that link? It doesn't... Yeah, anyone can look dodgy using a cash point. Maybe you were tired, maybe you were, harassed, maybe you were whatever. Well, police make the link because one of the things stolen from the Dixons before they were killed was their Cashline cards to use in the bank. So, a sketch is drawn. A sketch is put together from what people can kind of remember of this man who was using the Cashline. Now, it's the 80s, right? It's a pencil sketch. Now, these weren't great in the 80s. They're not these kind of like, sort of 3D amazing fucking things that we have now with all like face recognition and all that pish. I say pish, they're not pish. But you know, like all those things, it just basically was a sketch. It just basically was a sketch of someone. It was like a profile of someone using a cash machine. So this good old pencil sketch of a man with a curly hairdo and a dodgy tash, it goes up everywhere. The police are trying to get it put into newspapers, but it gets reproduced and put round all the villages, all the sort of local area. But is this leading anywhere for police? No. Nobody comes forward to say, I know who this person is, or I recognise this guy. So a few people in the area have seen someone dodgy use a cash card. That's it. That's all police have to go on. Locals from the town and in the area will say it's so baffling. We have 4 people dead. We have the robberies, and police cannot seem to catch anyone in connection with any of this. It's beginning to look as if the murder cases are going to go completely unsolved. Meanwhile, the robberies in the area, they continue. Now, this is years they've been going on. Years and years and years. And whenever they are reinvestigating the robberies, they keep coming up against one name, and that name is John Cooper. So police, having heard this name a lot when they're looking at the robberies, they go and they have a chat with John Cooper. And they say, okay, what do you know about these robberies? And he says, well, look, I live in the area, yes. I'm aware of these crimes, but I have nothing to do with it. And police say, okay, fine. But can we have a look around your property? When they look around John Cooper's property, they find stolen jewellery, they find wallets, they find credit cards, they find hundreds of belongings from all of the robberies over the years. John Cooper is immediately arrested and he's taken to police cells. When he gets to police cells, he's questioned about the robberies and he tries to deny it, but there is so much evidence to suggest that he is the robber they've been looking for years. John Cooper is convicted and sentenced to 16 years in prison for robbery and for the attacks on the victims in their homes. So that's fine. That's all well and good. So now they've got the person who's been committing these robberies. But what about the murders? Well, those cases are going cold. Police are at a loss. The brother and the sister, the couple who went camping, these stories are heading for the cold case files, and that's where they end up. The murders do go into the cold case files, probably never to be solved, because police just cannot find who committed these crimes. Let's do this. Just because this story has a lot of elements, let's just do this. We'll zoom out. We'll do a wee overview. If we go back to the start, we have a lovely Welsh coastal town, nice and quiet. We have a series of violent robberies that happen and they continue for years. Then, in this same place, 4 murders happen. They arrest a man for the robberies, but the murders go unsolved. All that police have in connection with the murders is a sketch of a man who once used a cash point to withdraw some money. It's really not much to go on. So 10 years pass, 10 years, and Welsh police start a new initiative, and it's to reopen old cases and see if in the light of day, in the advance of technology, they can solve any old cases. So the first one on the list is, of course, the 4 unsolved murders. Remember, the public here still wants answers. The family of the victims still want answers. So, bit by bit by slow little bit, police begin to fit together a few little things. They look at, right, who was out robbing and committing crime at the time of the murders in the area. And they keep landing back at the same name, John Cooper. Now, once they start down this road, they find it really hard to come back from that. They start to sort of add up the dates, the times, the location, and now, well, they're pretty sure it's him. Do they have proof? No. No, they don't. They know he's committed all these robberies, but do they know he's committed the murders? No. But, strangely, they're going to find some evidence to go on, and it's going to come in the oddest of ways. Remember that game show he was on? Well, it's in his police notes that he appeared on this TV show. So police think, well, okay, you know what? We've not really got much else that we can really do here. Let's watch the TV show. So they watch it. They watch this TV show. It's half an hour long. They're not really sure it's going to prove anything. And then, wait, just one, a gosh darn tooting, would you fucking believe it, minute. Right at the end, right at the very end of the show, just as the credits are going to roll, the camera catches John from the side and police freeze the tape. On TV, his side profile looks so familiar with something else in their investigation. This pencil sketch drawing of the man using the cash point. Now, I'll put this picture up. It's so weird because it's identical. It's undeniably the same guy. And that's where the whole thing explodes. So police are going, yeah, we know that he's in prison because he committed all of those robberies and those terrible violent crimes in people's homes. But now they're looking at on TV his side profile and it matches perfectly with the sketch of the murderer. And very quickly they go, that's it. He's actually been the murderer all along, and we just never saw it. We just never saw it until we saw it on TV. Very quickly they get him in for questioning. So he's already in prison for robbery, as we talked about. So they bring him in for questioning, and at first he won't talk. He won't admit to anything. He just won't say that he has any involvement. He just got nothing to say. Police are also unearthing all of the old evidence which has been stored away from years, things that they never thought would ever see the light of day, like bits of clothing, bits of things they found at the scene of robberies, stuff that has been boxed up, put away for years and labelled cold case. They just never thought this stuff would ever see the light of day. So they're starting to go through it. Now there's more interviews. So now he changes his tune, this dickhead, and he starts to accuse police of trying to pin it on him. He's saying, "Oh, you just want me to be guilty because you've never solved these murders. You just want these cases closed. You just want someone to be guilty." Police say, "No, we actually think you are guilty." And he's like, "You've got no proof, you can't prove I ever fucking did that. Yes, I robbed all those people, I never murdered those 4 people, I never did it." So they're going through old clothing, and what they find is they find a spot of blood on some clothing from the crime scene back in the day, and it matches with John's blood type. So they present this to him, and he's this guy, honestly, this fucking guy, in a police interview, when he's presented with that, do you know what he actually says? He says, "Quite often, my son would borrow my clothing. I would be really more worried about my son than I would about me." What a dick! What a dick! Trying to pin something on his son. Like, shut up. Just because your son once borrowed, a piece of clothing, or just shut up. Just be quiet. So, the time comes for John to be released on robbery charges. He's served his sentence now for the robbery charges, and police are at that really, really annoying place where they just don't have the exact concrete evidence they need. Yes, they've got a spot of blood, but it's not really enough. It's just a blood type. It's not a perfect match. They don't have enough to hold John, and he is let out of prison. So police, when he's out, they continue to call him back for more interviews, and the search goes on, and eventually, as the search goes on, they start to discover more and more crucial DNA from the original scenes, hidden in the depths of everything that they never thought they would ever look at again. Now, one of the things that they find is they find the sawn-off shotgun, and it's been painted black to try and cover the fingerprints, but police, they can remove the black paint, which they do, and when they remove the black paint underneath it, using technology that they didn't have years ago but they now have, they can find John's fingerprints on the sawn-off shotgun, and it's now enough to arrest John Cooper. They arrest him for the 4 murders by now, which happened 24 years ago. 24 years, that is so long. John's arrested. The case goes to court. There's this really annoying footage of him coming out of the police van, going into court, and he shouts, "Don't accuse me before I've been to court. Don't assume that I'm guilty." Bleh. Fuck off, mate. So, in court, the whole entire 24-year period is played out wonderfully by the prosecution and the police. Even the sketch and the appearance on the game show, they're used in court to talk about how police arrived at their conclusion. Now, this case is covered widely, and it's used as such a strong example of how the evolution of police testing, DNA, blood work, how much it's come on in the way that we can now prove that people are guilty of something that they thought they'd gotten away with. After 24 years from the murder of Helen and Richard in their home, and the brutal death of Gwenda and Peter Dixon, John Cooper is sentenced to 4 life sentences. The peaceful, quiet town finally has the answer. The public finally know who was responsible for those brutal deaths, and the families are able to put it to rest. John Cooper appeals the charges, saying police have got it all wrong, but his appeal is denied. He doesn't appeal again. John Cooper, UK serial killer, the game show killer, will never be free from prison. And so ends the story.
Begin at the beginning. It is spring, moonless night in the small town, starless and Bible black, the cobble streets silent and the hunched quarters and Rabbit's Wood limping invisible down to the slow black.
Alright then, well, I hope you enjoyed that. I just love the fact that this guy thought he got fucking away with it and then got caught. What a psycho. What an absolute psycho of a man. Yeah, a beast. Horrible, horrible, horrible man. Thank God he got caught. So, if you enjoyed this episode, get in touch. If you want to talk to me, you can. Well, join the Facebook group. It's a wonderful place to be. One of the nicest things that I saw this week was someone who just recently joined the group, only maybe like a week ago, and said, "Oh my God, already Extraordinary Stories podcast is my favourite thing in my feed," which is great. Like the page, please. If you could go and like the Extraordinary Stories podcast page, that would be good. Twitter, Instagram, I'm all over those. If you want to email me, you can. extraordinarystoriespodcast@gmail.com. I'm always hanging about, ready for a chat. Well, I will be getting on with the new series coming soon, but I hope you enjoyed just this episode. Just another crazy story in the world. So, yeah, that's about it. I'm really need to get better at how I try and actually like leave the podcast. It's almost like I don't want to leave. I think that's the problem. I think the problem is I don't want to switch the microphone off. I think that's the issue. So now I'm just babbling a lot of nonsense at you, and you're like, can we just end the episode? Because we've all got things to be doing. We've all got places to be getting on to. So yeah, I will go. And I'll just say, until the next episode, thank you for listening. Okay, goodbye.
It didn't affect me really one way or the other. I would imagine from the look on his face, let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over. Let's get it on, let's do it, let's get it over.